This is sort of a rebuttal to James O'Neill's commentary this morning about Julie Bishop. I started out on Gumshoe News with Dee McLachlan saying, oh, Julie is encouraging Australia to bomb Syria, and that's a bad thing. Of course it's a bad thing. So what to do about it? Well, then one of our writers comes on and says, adults should take over in Parliament. And I'm saying, no, adults can't take over. There's a much more serious issue here. And he, being from international law field, wants to say, Article blah blah of the UN Charter says you shouldn't do this and that. I say, no, you cannot rely on anything of like a UN Charter. You cannot rely on international law. After all, who would enforce it? When I was young and UN was sort of new, the thought was, we have nice nations like America, nice nations who will see to it that anything that's been written in those, it's like a treaty, it says, we sign it, so others sign it, we'll all do it, we'll follow these rules. Apparently there was never the slightest hope or wish that that would happen. It's a fake game, the whole thing. The fact that Mr. Rockefeller gave the land on the East River for the UN might suggest something. In any case, it just is it's a piece of illusory material. You can't do that. You can't say we've written it somewhere and now it will be followed. That would be like, put your children in the playground and you say, now, Jimmy, you must not take Billy's toys. Well, you're there. You're the mother. You're going to, if he takes the toys, you're going to do something to make it happen. There's no one to stand there and make it happen. It's a false rule. The UN law is a false rule. But if, as someone wants to say, that Julie Bishop shouldn't be sitting there in the front bench and saying, okay, Australia, we give our troops, airplanes, whatever, to deal with Syria, what is it that she should be saying? Or what are the restraints on her? Or what is the guidance? And is she doing wrong? Certainly I feel she's doing wrong. We don't just go around bombing people, but then we do bomb people. And I'm not saying because it happens and it's a trend that then you got to respect that trend. No. Think about this. As Dee McLachlan is always saying, in about 2006 approximately, maybe a bit earlier, we had a retired general of America named Wesley Clark. Actually, he was a presidential candidate for a minute there. And he seemingly decided to be a whistleblower and tell you what the plan was to invade 6 or maybe 7 countries of the Middle East. Well, it included Sudan and Somalia. That's not Middle East, but Sudan, Somalia, and Africa, and then I think Afghanistan, Lebanon, Syria, Iran would be, he said, and we'll finish off with Iran. Now, he gave that little spiel on the Amy Goodman show, and it may look like he was, revealing something naughty, and now we should deal with it. But I don't think that's what he was doing. For one thing, he's pure establishment, pure Pentagon, and more likely he was informing us, and this was quite a while ago, of what would happen both to condition us and possibly as a, what do you call when they test the waters, a trial balloon, a trial balloon to see who would object. I mean, that they often do that, right? And then they sometimes get objection and then they don't go through with the plan. But certainly no one objected and everyone became, just think how easily we become accustomed to anything if it is the custom. So, skirt hems can go up and down, and you see them going up and down, and you follow the custom, whatever that may be, or long hair, short hair. We always naturally follow what is happening. How would there be any culture or children learning what's going on around them if we didn't have a natural tendency to just go along with what is happening? So, but I shouldn't say that Wesley Clark had much of an impression on anyone anywhere. It's just a little clip on YouTube. I don't know how many people have ever seen it. Nevertheless, the fact that he stated way back then how many countries we would bomb, we being the U.S. really, but it was called the Coalition of the Willing at some point. Coalition of the Willing. And by saying that, he's really announcing something very true and very real in history, which is the strong conquer the weak. Have you ever heard of the weak conquering the strong? You ever heard of the strong holding back to be nice guys? No, we just do it. We both, as individuals, we take as much resources as we can versus our neighbor, unless there are kin, in which case we have these other automatic biological restraints, and even if it's our tribe or our clan, maybe a little bit different from if it's your sister or your cousin, but you do hold back. But you don't hold back when it is a foreign group, just the opposite. You lose all moral sense. And a theologian named Reinhold Niebuhr said this in a book in 1932, which was much acclaimed at the time, but also much tossed out as wrong, but it's certainly correct. He called it, I think he said, moral man and immoral society. So he said, a man can be moral. One person can exercise restraint. And we do. We're very much inclined to look for social approval, and if our behavior is naughty, you get in line. But you can't ask a society to be moral, because think of all soldiers today who are immediately trained the day they get into the army. They are told to just submerge whatever their objections or thoughts might be and do as told. And what are they doing? They are fighting the enemy. So you're an individual, you fall in with your group, and there's other groups over here, and you've got to give all, and you're certainly never going to say, hold back, don't hurt those people over there. The whole point is hurt them. And that's a basic instinct in human nature, and it's been going on for a long time. And some of us have gained from it, some of us have lost from it, but such is history. So back to Julia Bishop. What should guide her? Well, we could at very least object to her so-called logic that she's going to urge a bombing in order to lower the number of refugees, other than, I don't know, maybe she meant that humorously. Yeah, you can lower them by killing them. No, she was trying to say, something we're going to do in Syria is going to, we're good old Australians, and we're going to do the right thing there, and that's somehow going to help the extreme refugee situation that's going on everywhere at the moment. Well, I think there's only one thing to do about refugee situations, and that is make them not happen, make people not be on the run, might assist them in their country. But okay, maybe Julie, who is not sitting here next to me, but if she were, she might say, Mary dear, what I want is that we show our need to root out that bad group in Syria, which is sometimes known as ISIS. But today, being September 1 of the year 2015, it's already plain, and it's not hidden, it's not conspiratorial, it's just known that the U.S., Israel, other countries are supporting ISIS. Of course, they also supported Al-Qaeda. And Mr. Brzezinski, who's no fool, right? Zbigniew Brzezinski, hard to pronounce name. He was working for Carter, and he said, okay, we'll go in there. This is 1979, supposedly Cold War. And there was never a Cold War, but that's another story. But supposedly we hear that the Soviet Union's going to go into Afghanistan, and we are going to screw the Soviet Union in two ways. First, by making their military operations on the ground so unbearable that their country will suffer, as the U.S. did supposedly during the Vietnam War. And another thing that we'll do is we'll set up a new ideologically trained group of Islamists, and we'll help them out. That was called the Mujahideen, based in Pakistan, and I think the U.S. admits to spending like $80 billion on it or something. Now this was to build up the Al-Qaeda types. I guess you could take anybody in any religion who already had a religion and sort of rev them up. I think you could do that. That must have been done to those guys. They weren't naturally feeling that, and it's not natural to Islam to be more personally on the go than any other religion. People in any religion are on the go. If they think God has said do A, B, and C, you want to do A, B, and C. But this image of the terrorist, very much constructed by those who want to divide and rule. And the plan for divide and rule never ends. I would imagine that the U.S. back in about 1860 set up the KKK as a way of keeping the activity going. It seemed to be then whites and blacks in America going against each other through the KKK. It's just one of the things they do. Or the Brits setting up the Muslim Brotherhood, which is still a going concern, but clearly it was organized by Britain around 1920. So back to my story. I'm afraid I'm not coming up with anything very helpful here. In fact, coming up very negative. But if it is all negative, we should say that. We shouldn't say, we're going to fix it and everybody's going to be nice and some new person will come in Canberra and replace it. Oh, no. No, no, no. You have to deal with it. But if you want to deal immediately with Syria, you could say, we just can't go around bombing people. And if the U.S. is still going to do it, or maybe Canada joins in, however many countries will join, it still matters a lot to the world that any particular country, in this case maybe Australia, would say, nah. And by the way, guys, remember the talk by Wesley Clark and when he said we're just going to do it? So it doesn't have anything to do with the reasons being given for it now. What were the reasons given in Somalia or Sudan or Lebanon? It's a plan. It's a takeover plan. They say that the air base, or what do you call it, military base that we put into Iraq is like the most fabulous one that has ever been built anywhere. Well, obviously that was the goal, wasn't it? And by the way, we have built a fantastic one in Israel, and a few people in Israel are onto it, and they realize that this is not Israel's property. But then Australians have a little trouble admitting that Pine Gap is not there for Australia, is it? No. Anyway, so I can't be helpful. I wish I could be, but I can at least be helpful of saying stop putting forth the idea that the situation can be easily turned around. No, it can't. That doesn't mean we have to be monsters, and we should speak up against monstrosity and make a lot of noise trying to figure out ways not to do this.